So we just discussed the new culture war outrage of the day, which is that apparently Bud Light did some sort of an ad campaign with a trans influencer named Dylan Mulvaney, and the right melted down over that. They were outraged. They called for boycotts. There was endless content about it, and all of it is just so silly. Everybody knows what Bud Light is doing when they do that. They're trying to, be diverse and sell their product to everybody in the country, not just the majority, but also minority communities. That's why there's always been ads with whatever product you want to talk about. There's been black people, there's been brown people, there's been people of different religions, there's been different genders. It's always been like that, and they're really ramping it up now because they just want to sell their product everywhere, right? This is corporate virtue signaling. We all know what it is. But the right is absolutely outraged by this, and in this case in particular because we're dealing with a trans person. Well, Joe Rogan apparently got involved in this. He had some conversation with somebody on his podcast, and New York Post wrote up an article here. Joe Rogan slammed by fans for defending Bud Light over Dylan Mulvaney sponsorship. So here's what they say. Joe Rogan's rabid fan base soured on the Spotify star after he took a sip of Bud Light during his podcast and said the controversy surrounding Dylan Mulvaney's partnership was much ado about nothing. Quote, "Wonder how much Bud paid him for that," one Twitter user commented. Another Twitter user accused Rogan of sitting on the fence while he plays it safe. "Because cultural degradation matters, but Joe has never cared about that," another Twitter user wrote. "Well, Joe, I give an F, because they are shoving this crap down our throats," a Twitter user commented. Rogan dismissed the controversy over the Bud Light ad campaign featuring Mulvaney, a social media influencer who amassed millions of followers during the pandemic as she chronicled her transition from a male to a female online. The comments took many by surprise, given that he has come under fire from liberals who view some of his past remarks as transphobic. Rogan, a fierce critic of cancel culture, angered LGBTQ activists in 2020 when he hosted author Abigail Schreier, who wrote a book called Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters. The podcaster, who has also ignited protests for his comments about the COVID vaccine and pandemic-era lockdowns, has also hosted controversial figures such as Jordan Peterson, who've been critical of trans culture. So this is the video here, Joe's take on the Bud Light controversy. "Here's my take," Rogan said during Tuesday's episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. "What they're doing is just spreading the brand to an extra group of people." That's exactly right. "Why, if something is good, do you give an F? Who's got it?" Rogan said. He suggested there was too much outrage over the Mulvaney ad campaign since she is a goofy person. The thing is about this Dylan Mulvaney thing is like, it's just someone who wants a lot of attention, and you've given someone a lot of attention, and you're going to reach someone from another audience, Rogan said. "I saw it and I was like, what the fuck is this?" was my initial reaction. "It's like, this is silly." Rogan added, "But it's also, your typical Bud Light fan is NASCAR or sports. Like, that's most of the people are drinking Bud Light. How is that a big deal? I think it's goofy because I think that person Mulvaney's goofy, but if you want to hire a goofy person, who gives a shit? It's kind of hilarious when somebody says 365 days of womanhood. It's also just a can with that person's face on it. That's all that was. It wasn't like stuff they were selling." So anyway, there's Dylan Mulvaney, apparently. There's the can with the picture on it. Rogan said, "But it's kind of funny. It doesn't make me mad. It just makes me like, what? The ad campaign has prompted calls for a boycott from high-profile celebrities such as country music legend Travis Tritt, as well as southern rock rap crooner, weird word, Kid Rock, who famously shot cans of Bud Light using an assault rifle." What a loser. Bud Light's parent company, St. Louis-based Anheuser-Busch, has stood behind the ad campaign. Okay. So, look, this is an example of Joe Rogan's normie instinct coming through. I think one of the main reasons for Joe's success is that he's always had some semblance of a normie instinct where he doesn't fancy himself too political. He doesn't fancy himself too ideological. He's just, excuse the pun, an average Joe. And so he looks at this and he's just like, and again, I think this is the normie reaction across America too. It's like, who's being the most loud and aggressive about this? Oh, it's the conservatives calling for a boycott. Okay, I'm against them. Whoever's the most loud, whoever's the most obnoxious, whoever's the most over the top, whoever's obsessed with the issue more, I think in the eyes of the public becomes the, ugh. Like, why do you guys care so much, right? And I made this analogy before, but if you reversed it and you had, let's say Bud Light didn't do an ad like this. And then you had this campaign from some left-wing activist group that was like, we demand in all advertisements across the board, we have an equal showing of every single gender, every single ethnicity, every single religion, and if you don't meet these demands, we're going to boycott you. If that was the story, I think he would have flipped on it. He would have been like, shut up. And I think your average American would have been like, shut up. But in this instance, Bud Light decided, free of their own volition, yeah, we probably want to sell our beer to trans people too, so let's have a trans ad campaign with a popular trans influencer or whatever. And so the loud and obnoxious and aggressive people are the conservatives, and it's the classic, it's those anti-social justice warriors, the anti-woke types are now just as loud, just as aggressive, just as obnoxious, or even more so than the people they claim to hate, right? And it's that mindset that really, I think, turns people off. And by the way, it's the authoritarian angle too, right? It's like, we're going to try to force you to not have a trans person in an ad. Like, why does that matter at all? Look, you're never going to get corporations to stop trying to reach out to basically everybody because they want to sell their product to everybody. But I think their outrage meter is always broken because, again, the most important point is one of the reasons corporations do that is to cover up the fact that we're super woke, we're super tolerant and inclusive and diverse. The reason they do that is to try to be like, we're down for the struggle, we swear, when in reality, these are the same corporations that are paying people way less than they're worth, that are outsourcing jobs, that in some cases, like with Hershey's, they're using slave labor, child slave labor overseas to make their product. Like, they're buying the government and being super corrupt and buying tax breaks and buying regulation cuts. Like, that's the real outrage. And conservatives, to the extent they have any corporate critique, it is never that. Because ideologically, the Republican politicians agree with giving the corporations every single thing they want. The only thing they have an issue with is, oh my God, you are culturally, you are now siding with the left, and we can't stand for that. We think that's an outrage. That's more of an outrage than you using slave labor or paying your CEO 400 times what your average worker makes, paying starvation wages. And that just shows their outrage meter is broken. And so it's good to see Rogan's normie instinct won out on this one, because it's not like there's plenty of other issues where, he wouldn't have this take. But again, I think it comes down to who's the loudest, who's the most obnoxious, who's the most aggressive. Whoever's that is the most annoying, and I'm going to be against them. And in this instance, it's the conservatives who are the most loud, the most aggressive, the most obnoxious, the most annoying. And these boycotts never work. Ever. Ever, 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 ever. And the left used to do this stuff too, and probably still does to one extent or another, but it doesn't work. And anyway, so there you have it. One Joseph Rogan standing up and saying, I have no problem with Bud Light using a trans person in an ad campaign. And again, I think that's the default take of most Americans. Who cares about a stupid ad campaign? All right, guys, that's the show. I love you all very much. Thank you, as always, for listening. Everybody do me a big favor. Click the like button. Click the subscribe button. Click the bell icon so you get a notification every single time a video drops. I would deeply, deeply appreciate that. And yeah, remember, you can always listen to the full show on Spotify. And we do the full audio podcast there every single time we have a show. And what else I got for you, man? I think that's it. Oh, yeah, support the show on Patreon. Link in the video description box below. We never talk to advertisers, so you guys fund the show. Link below. And also Substack as well. Support Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. All right, love you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Everybody have a great rest of your day. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.